Welcome to Robotics and Automation News webinars, where you can be part of a global event without leaving your home or office. Attend our live webinars and communicate directly with influential professionals in your industry.
Hello, my name is Abdul Montakim. I'm editor at Robotics and Automation News.com. In this interview, I talk to Lior Elazary, CEO of inVia Robotics, a startup which offers mobile robots for warehouse operations. Lior, hello and welcome to the webcast. Tell us about yourself and your company, please.
Hi, so I'm Lior. My company is inVia Robotics, and we provide robotic solutions to the fulfillment industry. In particular, we've been concentrating mainly on e-commerce, since that's one of the largest growing markets. But not only that, it's probably one of the markets that's feeling the most amount of pain. So our company basically provides robotic solutions to help with that pain. And most of that pain has came in the fact that most people want to order things online. Most people want the items right away. Even an hour nowadays is too slow, and it's very difficult for them to pay for it. They want to click add to cart, but often they don't realize the amount of effort and the amount of energy that is required to get that item from the warehouse to their door. And often that's required a lot of labor, and labor that actually doesn't really exist. Most people don't want to walk around in the warehouse all day, so our customers have a really hard time finding it. So our robots basically help people, expend their efforts. So instead of a person walking, through the aisles and doing the picking themselves, our robots help them become more efficient and be able to pick many, many more times faster. And they do this by basically not having the person walk inside the warehouse. Now they're standing still, and the robots bring the products to them, and they're able to pack it, spend more time on QCing it, making sure that it is the right product and it's not damaged, and then pack it and send it out. So, our robots known in the industry is a goods to person system, where the robots bring the goods to a person and then, they manipulate it from there.
Could you describe in basic terms your robot and what it does? So as far as I know, from the pictures I've seen, it's a wheeled robot that looks like a platform on which shelf units can be, it can carry shelf units.
So not exactly. So our robot, it is a mobile platform, so it's able to navigate and move around the warehouse autonomously. The other aspect of it is a manipulation aspect. So the robot itself is able to go out and manipulate items, in particular boxes, totes, and so forth. The robot itself has basically a scissor lift on top of that mobile platform and a retriever that sits on top of that scissor lift. That allows the robot to go in and very cost effectively manipulate items. In particular, we manipulate totes or boxes. So when the robot goes out to a shelf, it's able to pick that item and then bring it over to a person. And that's extremely important because you want to be able to move the item, but also be able to handle the item as well. Otherwise, you might need people on both ends to manipulate that item. So the robot is doing that all autonomously, thus, saving the person a lot of labor from going out there, manipulating the items and coming back.
When did you start the company, and can you sort of describe your journey from the start to here, and possibly give us some highlights or lowlights, challenges, perhaps?
Sure. So we started a company in February of 2015. Previous to that, we were going to try to have robots help elderly care and try to do more robots in the home. That was our initial thought. As we started building some of the robots, we quickly realized that some of the business models would be very, very difficult. If you're trying to sell a robot for $40,000, $50,000, for maybe we'll do about 20–30% of the work at the home. That might be very challenging. I mean, a few people will buy it, but it's not gonna be massively Profitable just because you have other options that are much more cost effective and can do more than 100% of the work. But as we were building these robots, we were ordering these parts online, and we were ordering it from Amazon Prime. Overnight aluminum sheets, 8-foot by 4-foot, huge aluminum sheets. And we're wondering, how does Amazon do that? How are they able to ship and do the shopping for us with us barely paying anything? I mean, $99 a year was pretty much nothing compared to the amount of materials that we were ordering from them. And we started looking at their financials. I also had a previous business called Edgecast, where we were basically a content distribution network. We had servers all around the world, but some of our customers were e-commerce customers, and we went and started visiting their warehouses and seeing how they're doing it, how they're able to do it. And we got the same story over and over again. Basically, help us. It's extremely difficult for us to do this task. This task really sort of brought up, I think, by Amazon. Been brute forced a little bit by Amazon, using funds that not necessarily, they're definitely doing it pretty efficiently, but still have not solved the problem. And really the problem is, how do you do shopping for everybody at zero cost? And our customers, current customers and my previous customers, were all struggling with the same thing, because for them, they were not able to lose money. So they could not reduce their shipping rates. They could not reduce their picking costs. And they were really struggling. And they said, whatever you guys can do, please help us. So we worked with a couple, and we've designed this robot from the ground up, doing a very specific, one of the tasks in the warehouse, which is moving items from point A to point B. There's these thoughts of creating some of the robots to be very general purpose, like a human that would be able to maybe cook and clean, and then maybe at the same time, manipulate items. But for us, we looked at the problem and we said, what would be the best robot that would be able to fulfill this job? And we've designed the robot actually first in simulations, showed them the process, showed them what it would look like. When they all, agreed and thought, then we started actually building the robot. Our background actually came in from robotics. With me and my two other partners, we've worked on a lot of DARPA related projects, the DRC, the DARPA Robotic Challenge, as well as smart drones, autonomous cars. So we knew what robots are able to do, what they're capable of doing, and what they have challenges with. And in particular right now, and it's still true today, fine manipulation, things that you have to do with your hands that are very fine to manipulate, like turning little screws or picking like a bunch of beads from a box. That's very challenging for robots these days, and challenging in terms of cost because it costs too much, and challenging in terms of technology itself. So we've decided that if we could do gross manipulation, so like you see our platform, it doesn't do any fine manipulation, but it's able to pick boxes and move things around. We're able to let the people do what they do best, which is fine manipulation, and they can do that very fast. But then they don't have to walk around, and they don't have to do the gross manipulation. So picking up that whole box, bringing it, from point A to point B. And that's where we basically designed the robot to do that for them. Like I said, in the industry, it's known as a goods-to-person system. But since our robot is fairly flexible, it's able to operate in various environments and operate with various workflows. And for one of the reasons this is extremely important is in the past, the customers often converted the environments to the robots. If you look at the old style ASRS systems, automatic storage and retrieval systems, or shuttle systems, you often had to build these warehouses that cost, sometimes in upwards of hundreds of millions of dollars, 2 or 3 years in the making. And really what you were doing is converting the warehouse to the technology. And that was very expensive. Nowadays with our robots, they're very flexible, they're very adaptable. So they're able to adapt to the existing infrastructure. What that allows us to do is reduce the cost of implementation. So we're able to go into an existing warehouse and work with their existing infrastructure, their existing shelves, their existing totes. The totes could be boxes. They don't necessarily have to be a plastic tote, corrugated totes, in different sizes, shapes. And that enables us to basically deploy very quickly and save a lot of money to the customer, which then brings the ROI, to a very profitable point, where before there was a big problem in getting that ROI. And that's why we don't see, often robots, we don't see those stuff all over the place, is again, because of the cost. So one of the biggest things that we worked really hard on is to make the robot adaptable, to make it be able to conform to the environment, not the other way around, and have the robot be able to execute the tasks that our customers need without major modifications of the warehouse.
Okay, thanks for that. So if I could ask you for some sort of statistical overview, or maybe even specifics about sales and the market opportunities, possibly customers, and some sort of idea of how you're doing in terms of business, if you can share that with us, whatever you can.
Sure. No, very happy to. So right now in the field, currently we have over 100 robots deployed in various warehouses. The customers that we have currently are all, like I mentioned, in the e-commerce space, although we have been getting a lot of requests from other markets, such as manufacturing, just general logistics in general. If you think of an airline company that needs to get a fuel pump because the airline is down and they need to get it fast. So there's all these other opportunities, but right now we've actually been overwhelmed just with the e-commerce customers. One of our customer, Rakuten, we're deploying in multiple warehouses currently. We're going to be running our robots right now during Black Friday and Cyber Monday, so everybody's on deck for all that. And like I mentioned, one of the reasons is that some of the customers, if you so with Holler, they're struggling to get the people, they're struggling to get the labor, because most people don't want to do this and don't want to walk around in the warehouse. But also it's also very expensive for them to do it as well. That with our system, they're able to deploy very quickly. They're able to get the robots up and running and get their throughput. Like I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned that, but have a person operate usually 5 to 6 times faster than what he's currently operating at. So they're able to get to that very quickly and be able to get a large ROI. So as a result, we actually had overwhelming demand. We have more than our share. We pretty much booked all the way till June, July of this year with a bunch of deployments. And like I mentioned, as this e-commerce grows, we're actually seeing more and more demand for that. So, from our robots, we're just trying to see how we can produce them fast enough. We expected to have, 300 deployed by this year. And before the end of the year, we're going to have all those. We have already built them and we have them deployed all around. And we think for next year, we're going to have probably around 1,000 to 1,200 deployed in the warehouses. And it's really mainly due to our limitation of being able to move fast enough. It's not so much from the market. The market seems to want a lot more very fast and very quickly.
What are your plans and outlook for 2019? And perhaps you can talk about the people who already work, how many people who work at your company, what their skill sets are, what you might need going forward, maybe employ more. And you've already given some highlights of the kind of sales you expect, but talk about next year and maybe beyond, what you foresee.
Sure. So next year, we're, like I said, we're looking at probably deploying around 1,000 to 1,200 robots out there across several warehouses. Some of them are going to be with our existing customers who are, have multiple warehouses and are just expanding, and some of them some new contracts that we've signed that we promised to, deploy these robots with. As far as people, we're really looking all across the board. If you think about it, now the person is moving from one task to a different task. So before, in the warehouse, you had a person walking around, picking items. where now we call them a robot wrangler. Now, they're managing robots and managing, the problems that might happen with a robot and being able to fix it. And all that is software that we've created to allow them to do this without having to have a PhD in robotics. And as a result, we're basically getting, people having to retrain them in the work field to know how to operate the robots, to know how to work with the robots, and then, putting them in place that they're able to now, in some sense, pick thousands of items without them having to walk around. So that is, we call that system our ROC, our Robotic Operations Center. And we've been trying to hire, as much as possible. And it ranges from, like, say, minimum wage employees all the way up to, somebody who sort of has some basic Linux skills to do that task. So it's not an extremely difficult task. It's a different task that, we train for and we teach them how to do. So that is probably the biggest side of our company that is growing currently. And like I said, it's basically because we have all these robots out there in the field and people have to maintain them and work with them. The other aspect is engineering that, we're growing and we're always, hiring engineers, getting great talent, people who know robotics. It is very difficult to find these days a little bit. It's a multidisciplinary subject. If you look at web development and you look at a full stack engineer, knows the database SQLs, knows UIs, knows a bunch of programming languages. Nowadays with robotics, it even takes that to the next level. And we need somebody who knows, a little bit of mechanics, knows a little bit of how to design circuit boards, know a little bit how to program AI, machines that are able to adapt and to learn. So all that is very, it's a lot more challenging. And unfortunately, I think there's not a lot of people out there with the training, but hopefully as this field progresses, more and more universities will be teaching and more people would be learning this stuff. So from those two aspects, those are probably our biggest needs, and we're always looking for people from that. Luckily, I think we're in Southern California, so it's great. We have tons of great resources out here, since SpaceX, JPL, Hughes Research Laboratories. There's a lot of talent out here.
Where do you currently get your robots manufactured? Do you make them all yourself, or do you ask outside companies to help you? And if volumes increase, sales increase, are you likely to contract out more and more, or what's the plan on that side of it, the actual manufacturing of them?
Yeah, so right now we do the final assembly ourselves. We have a bunch of manufacturers who are generating the individual pieces. So like, from the scissor lift, it's a link, so they make the link, or the aluminum sheets that are bent into a particular form to produce some of the parts of the robots. But then at our shop right here, we take all those and put them together. That allows us to both maintain the quality control, but also be able to iterate the hardware at a very fast rate. One of the things we wanted to do was iterate hardware at a software level. If you look at software, it often gets, now with Scrum, it often gets deployed almost on a 2-week basis where you're constantly putting features in. Hardware is a little bit more difficult because once you have the hardware on the field, it's not as easy to upgrade or to change. We've designed our robot from the ground up to be very modular and to be able to update that so we can upgrade things very quickly and basically have the next generations, out there on the field. In order to do that, we had to take care of some of, like I said, the final assembly. So most of the parts that we design, if we see something that we need to improve, we will go and improve it. New items will arrive. And using a very lean manufacturing process, we're able to integrate that in our production very seamlessly, so we can build these new batches without, having to tear down the assembly line and rebuild that. Now, I think in the future, we're seeing that actually being done in other manufacturing places, and we're slowly starting to give subcomponents that to our manufacturers who are able to keep up with changes and fast changes. I think one of the ways that they are doing it on their end is, again, they're also utilizing robots, and they're also utilizing automations in order to allow them to configure the parts that we need in real time and make it, make a very configurable part, a very updatable part that almost, every month that we give them a new set of plans, they're able to keep up with that. And as they're able to do that, we'll probably always maintain the final assembly, but then we'll assemble more subunits as opposed to individual units.
Okay, I get the sense about this market of warehouse robots or supply chain robotics that it's a big market and it's a very new market. Your products are very new, and so the other companies' products are similar. But it's such a big market and a new market that you may be avoiding each other in terms of kind of customers you go for and things like that. But what do you think how do you think is going to develop, or is there any competition that you already feel from other manufacturers of similar types of systems?
So we actually see ourselves fairly unique in this space right now. If you look at some of our competitors, one of the things that they're doing is they're just doing the movement. So their robots just move around. What that enables them to do is to have a person that still has to walk to the end, but he doesn't have to walk back to the pack out. Often, the way we look at it is in the, how much are you multiplying the human effort? So we feel like, with our competitors, and if you see the stuff they're quoting, they often are able to provide about 2x productivity. So if a person is operating at a particular rate, they're able to multiply that by 2. When we looked at that problem, we were thinking, really, you need to multiply this by 10. 2 really is just a Band-Aid. And there has been systems that have been able to do that were able to multiply, by 4 to 5x. And those were the old style ASRS systems. So that's on the other side of our competition, which is the big, massive systems, cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Like I said, 2-3 years in the making. The customer often has to project 10 years into the future, because when he's building it now, by the time he's done, he's got to figure out what the throughput will be in the future, which is very difficult these days to do, past several years. We feel like we fit right in the middle, where we're providing the fast throughputs that these traditional systems that used to cost hundreds of millions of dollars are providing, but with the ease of use and the flexibility and the ability to integrate into the warehouse as our other competition, just the mobile robots. So we really feel like we're right in the middle, where it's a really sweet spot where you get a very large ROI at a very low cost, and the robot is able to multiply human efforts, like I mentioned, by 5 to 6x, which is huge. And we're working with some of our customers to try to, increase that all the time and go even faster than that. So right now we do feel like, we're in the middle, but obviously, as technology progresses, more and more people are going to start to do similar things, and they'll just have to catch up to us. But yeah, we're constantly innovating, constantly trying to figure out, what is the next stage? What is, how do you get the higher multiplicativity? How do you get, a person to manage several warehouses, all autonomously, from the back, and be able to produce a lot more throughputs on their warehouses than them just walking around. And so we're constantly innovating and constantly, going toward that.
I think what you're suggesting is, or maybe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are systems, ASRS, traditional ASRS systems often involve conveyor belts and all sorts of other automated systems which are fixed to the ground and cost a lot of money to construct. And I have come across this situation before where people kind of compare the two, the traditional conveyor-based automated system versus mobile robots, which are obviously not fixed to the ground and probably easier and cheaper to install. Is that something that you think will grow, the competition between the two, and will mobile robots win more business because of that advantage of not having so many fixed infrastructure considerations to be made? Is that something that you see going forward, or will conveyors and traditional automation systems retain their market share in spite of mobile robots coming in?
So I think there's advantages and disadvantages to various, aspects of technology. If you look at a conveyor belt is a very efficient machine that's able to transport items very quickly. So if you got, tons and tons of boxes moving through it, and the path is fixed, it goes always from point A to point B on a single path. It's a very efficient machine to do that, and I don't think robots will ever be able to compete against that. Where the robots are able to compete is against a flexible model of that. So if you're constantly changing your conveyors, and if you look at some of the unique solutions that they came up with conveyors to do that, where you have tons of conveyors and tons of switches, and the package goes from here to here and goes all around. That is where the robots are able to really shine and really produce a very, very cost-effective solution for that. And the reason for it is that the robot is able to adapt to those changes very quickly and without a big infrastructure. So with the conveyor belts, like you mentioned, you have to invest tons of money and tons of infrastructure in putting all these conveyor belts and these switches and all that stuff. And it's also very fixed. If the next day you grew, or the next day you have a different volume, or you want to set up another pick station somewhere else, you're stuck. You got to get an engineer to move that conveyor belt. It doesn't move. But with the robot, it's very simple. Even from a very high level, warehouse manager could say, okay, I want my robot now to go from this point to this point and move that. So I think, again, to answer your question, it's really it's a matter of are you moving items constantly on a single line, doesn't change, it's always the same? Then probably a conveyor belt would be a better choice. But what's happening with the e-commerce and the way our industry moves and transforms, you're constantly changing your environment, your warehouse. One of our customers is moving right now. And, to support that move, if you have conveyor belts, they often don't move, like you don't move the conveyor belts. Here, they pack up the robots, move it somewhere else. The robots start in the new environment with no problem. So it's really about the flexibility that the robots are able to offer our customers, and the adaptability to go into an existing infrastructure without you changing it, that really gives them that power, where I think in those instances they will overshine conveyor belt and traditional automation. Even the old style 3D robot, it's a robot that's now able to adapt to existing environments and changes.
You raised $20 million in Series B funding, and I don't know how much you raised in the Series A, but it's a lot of money you've raised. What returns do you think people can expect?
Yeah. So, luckily, I think we have great investors who are looking at, the future and the, the potential of all this. Profitability has to do with, I think, with a company who's sort of a stagnant. So, we decide, okay, we're not going to grow anymore, and we're going to take out money and give it to shareholders. In this particular company right now, we're trying to invest as much as possible back into the company to support the growth. Like I mentioned, we have so many requests from customers and so much, customers on our pipeline that we can't even fulfill at this moment. That right now we're just, investing everything back into the operation, into the ROC operation, our robotic operations center, in order to grow the company and to be able to produce more. And I think we have many, many years ahead of us, to support that, since e-commerce is just at its infancy. As you see, more and more traditional brick and mortar stores are closing down. The fact that Toys R Us closed down for this Cyber Monday and Black Friday, that's putting a load on the e-commerce side, right? People are still buying toys. It's not that people have not bought toys. It's just that they're not going to the brick and mortar stores to buy toys. And it's just a transformation of the industry from the person, you spending your time going and picking items and doing the stuff, to you basically doing it online and saving your time to do other things, right, that you want to do. And that's, I think, what people want. And that industry is just in its infancy. So we're going to, be spending probably a lot more on our growth and growing the business. And we're very lucky to have great investors who believe in that same vision and, and want that, and actually constantly force us to try to, even take more and grow more and more and more. So, I think this industry, like I said, it's so much in its infancy. And, you got manufacturing, you got other logistics industries that need the same thing, that we didn't even begin to approach them. So I think we have many years to go for growth. So one of the other unique things I feel that we're doing is our robotic as a service business model. If you look in the past, people have bought robots. And right now we have a customer that have close to 80 robots. If you own 80 robots, you're part of the robot business. You have to know how to maintain them. You have to know how to work with them, how to optimize them. And since you bought them, you already spent the money for them. The burden is on you, on our customers, right, or the person who bought those robots, to make sure they're utilized correctly, to make sure they're efficient and actually providing the value. What we've done is create a different business model where we're charging people based on the productivity of the robot. So we, as a robotics company, own the productivity of the robot, which is really important because it aligns the incentives between us and our customers. Our customers, they don't want to be part of the robot business. They don't want to spend their money in buying a bunch of robots. They rather spend the money starting a new warehouse or buying more inventory for their stuff, or providing more on their marketing side to market their products. And they don't want to figure out, okay, how do I work with this robot? How do I optimize it? Do I need to hire a bunch of PhDs with robotics? So we take care of that for them, and we charge them based on the productivity of the robots. In our particular case, is on a per order basis. So however many orders the robots fulfill, we charge them a particular cost for that. So that is it. It really aligns the incentives because it puts us in charge of the productivity of the robots. If one of our robots doesn't operate correctly or has problems or it's not as efficient, we own that burden. We have to make sure that it is efficient, that it is working correctly, that it's providing the productivity for our customers. And our customers can concentrate on what they do best, right? Which is providing their products and being able to start more warehouses, or like I said, advertising their products. So it really aligns the incentives, but it also allows them to start and grow with their business. So they don't have to, project, 10 years into the future. They really can say, well, what do I need right now? And as their business grow, they're able to add or remove robots as they need. And in particular, we have some solutions for the peak, right? For these Black Fridays or Cyber Mondays, where they do often 4 times as much. And I feel like it's very different than, for example, a leasing, business model where we lease the robots. Because I think with the leasing, it's sort of the same thing. You lease the robot, but then the customer has to figure out what to do with the robot, how to make it most productive. Where if you really charge on a throughput basis, you really, the company is in charge of the productivity of the robots. And again, I think that's very important. And if you look in the past of robotic companies that have tried to sell the robots, people love to buy robots. People love robots, and they'll often buy a bunch, but then the robots end up just sitting still and not doing much because the customer doesn't really know how to make it, the most productive, and they'll just go back to the old ways. So we think with our robotic as a service model, and we're fairly unique in this business doing that this way, we're providing our customers with the best possible options for their growth and their needs.
Okay, thank you very much.
Send us an email at sales@roboticsandautomationnews.com to register for one of our many upcoming webinars. And if you'd like us to host your webinar, we have a range of options, including long-term lead generation packages and marketing campaigns. We look forward to hearing from you soon.